Hello. Okay. Oh, it's warm in here. I've had the heating on for what was the time? 12:42. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 6 hours. So it's lovely and warm, but we've just been out and it's absolutely bitter out there. Freezing cold. It's not even freezing. Do you know, it's 2 degrees. They call it the wind chill factor, don't they, or something, and maybe they're right. Oh, who knows? But it feels absolutely bitter. My hands are freezing today. But anyway, whatever. So we got hot Slurpee, so I thought I'd have a quick chat. Cheers. Slightly out of breath, slightly knackered, but hey, we're alive. Okay, so this little part of this video, a lovely lady called Mel says, what did you say, Mel, about my poetry? She said, oh, I don't know, sorry, how do I write my poetry? How do I get the inspiration? How do I find the words? How does it all come together? But most importantly, how do I get the spark? Well, that's interesting, Mel. The spark is there, isn't it? The spark is within you. The spark is around you. The spark is what you've been through, you're going through, what you've got coming up, your thoughts, your opinions, your ideas, your, I don't know, concerns about the future, your the way your past has shaped you, the funny things that you can remember that happened, maybe. The love that you hold inside for your child, your husband, your daughter, your dog, nature, the inspiration, the spark, is the same thing. It's just there, everything. What it is, all of that, we can encompass it in one word, and it's life, isn't it? That's what it is, it's life. But there's elements of life, so there's hope. There's a lot of hope in my poetry, even if you read something and it's a bit dour. If it's a bit, you know, if you're thinking, oh God, you know, what's he on? He's on a bloody tangent now. If you're thinking that, there is hope contained within that poem normally. So my only advice is to read it again. My advice always with my poetry, any poem in fact, not just mine, but any poem, is to read one poem at a time and give it its own space around it. Before and after that poem, there should be space. There should be thinking time, quiet time, cogitating, pondering, working things out. Is there a hidden meaning to something? When I say, I wrote a poem a few days ago about my shadow. So what is my shadow? Well, instantly you're going to think, oh, it must be Bodhi. No. Or you're thinking, well, it must be my physical shadow when the sun's out. No. So what is my shadow in that poem? There's a lot of hope in that poem. I won't tell you too much, but there's a lot of hope. And my shadow in that instance, in that poem, again, it's life, and it's everything connected with life and life's energy, and our energy source really within that life. So my shadow in that circumstances is depression. Now, I do have long-term, lifelong really, depression, which wanes and it ebbs and flows and moves around and comes and goes, and it's there, then it's not for months, then it is for months, whatever. Of course I take this, so ashwagandha. I would always recommend that to anybody, ashwagandha. If you have trouble sleeping, if you have trouble with, trouble with stress, trouble with depression, trouble with anxiety, ashwagandha. So the shadow is, I suppose, the black thoughts, the darkness, because it is a shadow, isn't it? And it's the shadow that can eclipse a life. It's the shadow that colours my life with a darkness. That's the shadow. So even, I'm not really happy, but I mean, if I was happy, there'd be a shadow over it of sadness, of darkness. That's the shadow. Yeah, so that's the hidden meaning, I suppose, within that poem. However, the poem has a lot of life and a lot of energy to it, but it also has a lot of hope, as I said earlier, because I'm in a pretty good place at the moment, and I'm not depressed. You know, if I'm depressed, I'm 1% or 2% depressed, that's all, you know. There's a lot of hope, isn't there? Moving forward, I feel good, I feel in a good place, and I feel that we've got good to come. And that is also contained within the poem. So, you know, even if it's dour, if it's down, if it's if you think, oh, this is a bit heavy for me or whatever, maybe it is, maybe it's too heavy for you, I don't know. But keep on reading, because there's a lot of hope, and it often ends with a good thing, or a lot of hope, or a little bit of inspiration or motivation sometimes. So keep on reading. Yeah, Mel, it's an interesting topic, because it's something I love. I absolutely love poetry. I love reading, I love writing, as you know. I love words, I love the play on words, I love so much about words, really, you know. I didn't do very well in school. I did well after school, but I didn't do very well in school. And I messed around a lot. And they decided, between my mum and the school, that I messed around more in religious education, which I was forced to do, which I didn't want to do. I messed around more in that lesson than any other. And for the first time ever, they gave a child a choice. And it wasn't mandatory to do really religious education, RE we used to call it. It's not mandatory, or it wasn't mandatory. So why were they forcing me to do it? And they would read from this book. You know, the book was called the Bible. The Bible was written over generation after generation after many, perhaps hundreds of years, or thousands of years, perhaps, who knows, by perhaps hundreds of different authors, set mostly in, you know, old-fashioned Jewish times, Bethlehem, Sodom and Gomorrah, Jerusalem, you know, the Gaza Strip or whatever, you know. It wasn't for me, all that stuff. And this man who could walk on water, or come back to life after he was murdered, or the talking bear and the talking snake, and I don't know, all that stuff, you know. A man 900 years old built a boat, they called it the Ark, and away he sailed in it with apparently every elephant, every animal on the earth. Including 2 male lions. If you look at the photos, 2 male lions, well, good luck with them. Must have had a lot of cages, must have been quite cruel, and also massive, because 2 elephants, you know, but whatever. It's just silly nonsense and fairy stories, as far as I'm concerned. And that was a 12-year-old boy, so if I knew that then, why do it? Why force me to go through that rubbish, you know? Cut a long story short, they said to me, if you had a choice, and I did have a choice, if you had a choice, what lesson would you rather do than RE? And really it was any lesson, but my preference would be English. I just loved, for some reason I loved stories, writing, poems, I don't know, there was something magical, special about. There's a lot that I love on this planet, obviously, sunsets and rivers and being out in nature and everything else, and my dog, and you know, it goes on and goes on. But the written word is a wonderful, or can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. It can also be a tool of harm, can't it, really, you know, poison pen letters, or anything from the government. You know, but on the whole, it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. Imagine if somebody sent you a poem, a love poem, if somebody loved you that much. Partly my inspiration for everything comes from when I was a little boy. When I was 9 or 10, I think I would have been 10. I went to a place called Whittenham Clumps. You can do your own research on this. Whittenham Clumps in Oxfordshire. It's 2 hills. And on one of the hills was, because it came down a few years ago, a tree they called the poem tree. And this guy, apparently he was in the war. I presume he got killed in the war, which is why it was so famous, I don't know. But he wrote a poem on the tree. He took a knife and a chisel and a few other tools and what have you up there, and a ladder, and he went up there every single day until it was finished, and he wrote this poem going around the tree, declaring his love for his girlfriend, friend, wife, lover, whatever. I have no idea what it says, because we could only make out the odd word. Obviously trees regrow, and he carved it into the bark, and the bark started pushing letters around and stuff like that. But some of the words that we could see and make out were just so heartfelt and wonderful and lovely, and you could see some that rhymed. And I think that's where a lot of stuff to do with words came from, particularly poetry. You know, we used to cycle back home. I lived in a village called Sutton Courtenay. Again, you can look at the map, Sutton Courtenay to Whittenham Clumps, so it's quite a little journey for my skinny little legs, me and half a dozen friends of the time. And yeah, it was I lost my train of thought, and it's funny, I'm suddenly 10 on my little push bike with my little legs going. Yeah, I got my thought back now. So on the way back, on the way there, we was full of chat and singing and being silly and trying to push each other off, and, you know, stopping and having a wee probably, and having a drink. I think we took a bottle of orange squash each. On the way back, you've cycled all that way, you've been up the hill, you know, up the clumps, around the clumps, read the poem tree, messed around, ran around, because children run. Do you remember running? So you do all that, but on the way back you kind of close yourself off, and you go into automatic pedalling, just slowly pedalling home. But your thoughts are then your own, and my thoughts were about the poem tree. Obviously, you're probably the same as everybody else. Hello, Bode. And you okay? Did you need a drink? I'll have to let him go for a drink. I'll turn this off and turn it back on in a sec, because we just come in. Yeah, and I used to make little rhymes up in my head, you know. So I'd be it had nothing to do with the poem tree, but I'd be cycling home, and I'd be thinking, this is what I really like, riding along with my mates on my bike, you know, whatever, all those silly little children's rhymes, and I was making up rubbish in my head, really, you know. I was hot and sweaty, but at least I wasn't called Betty. I don't know. But that's what I used to do, so that's where my love of poetry probably came from. Okay, I'll turn this off and turn it back on. Hello, we're back. So, I've got, I think, 3 pairs of trousers I've ordered recently, and I haven't tried any on. I've just sort of put them to, you know, and they seem to be fine. And these come in blue, brown. This is called brown. I know it's already orange. So blue, brown and green. I love the green and I like the brown. I didn't really go too much on the blue, so I thought if these fit I might get another colour, so I might go for the green. But I just thought, I know the light's rubbish, and I know you can hardly see anything really, but just have a quick look. What do you reckon? Yeah, they're glorious, I reckon, anyway, you know. There we go. So we try them on in a bit. Not in front of the camera, you might see me tallywhangle, I tells you. Yeah, so that's me bit about poetry, really. Cheers, Mel. I appreciate your question. The reason why Mel's asking me is she's aware, obviously, that I am currently writing my second poetry book. It's going to be probably 90%, 80 or 90% modern, in other words, this day and age. Going back really to about 2018, 2019, there's several poems from that time that I'm going through. They're not all going to make the book, maybe one or two might. A couple around 21 and 22, 2021 and 2022 obviously, and then all the rest are new, all the rest I've been writing now. I seem to be in a bit of a spurt of writing lately, which is wonderful. So I'm trying to write a poem a day. That's what I'm trying to do, but I haven't succeeded really. I did write a poem the other morning. I wrote the whole thing in probably an hour, something like that. It was done and dusted. And what I do, I put it in a file and it gets stored on my PC, and then I go back to it. So a bit later on, actually early evening, I went back to it and I had a look, and there was really nothing that I could change. I've got a letter coming. If she makes a noise, you listen to Bodie bark. He's in the kitchen. Silence. He's having his he's eating his dinner from last night. He doesn't always do this, but sometimes when we played ball in the day, he will go and have another snack. So that's good. That's nice. What was I saying then? You see, I lose my bloody train of thought. Who knows? I really don't know. What you're saying is about my nose. You'd like to know what happened to my nose, would you? You'd like to know that. What, you're wondering what? Well, keep on wondering. Keep on bloody wondering. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Bry. Yeah, what was I saying then? I really should listen, you know, when I talk, because it might have been interesting. No, I don't know. Okay, so that was, yeah, Mel asked the question about, really it's the inspiration, but it's everything else that comes into it. Oh, Mel, just to finish that off really, you asked about how do I write. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. So I put it back into my file once it's done and dusted, or I think it is. Then I read it a bit later on, and the later can be later in the day, it can be a week or a month or whatever. So I went back to this one just after tea time, I think it was, and I read it, and there really was nothing that I'd like to change in it, so, which is unusual. I did end up, the following morning, I did end up changing a line, but I kept some of the words and just moved it around, and then added a couple of extra words, because it was all about the flow, and I like my poems to flow. This new book is not going to contain any old rubbish. I'm not just going to scribble a poem for the sake of scribbling a poem. My poems come from the heart, they come from the soul, they mean something to me, and I'd like them to mean something to you. I'd like you to get them, and that's why I say I have space at the beginning, space at the end, space surrounding that poem. It should live in its own little bubble, that poem. Even if it's contained in the one book, it's on a separate page. So have that page as its own entity, its own thing for that time being. Yeah, anyway, I don't know. That's where they come from, is from my heart and soul, really. And the other thing just to cover was about rhyming. How do I rhyme things? Well, that's how I rhyme things, is by putting them away and coming back to them, really. I've got several poems on the go over the years that they don't rhyme. I know where they're going, kind of thing, but they're not quite there. And if it comes to me, it comes to me. If it don't, it don't. You know, sometimes I scrap the line entirely for something that is going to rhyme. I do like poems that rhyme. Never understood what they call free verse. Never understood that. So yeah, anything that rhymes attracts me, because that's, to me, is what a poem is. There are, of course, there's loads of different websites you could type into Google, I suppose. You know, if you're stuck on the word secret, what rhymes with secret, you know? Well, I don't know offhand because I'm too bloody tired. So you could type that into Google and see what Google comes up with, or there must be loads and loads. I tend to just do it myself. I get more out of it. I like to think it through. And if not, I like to put it away and then think it through. So it's all about me writing my poem. It's not cheating by using anything else. Of course it's not. You know, if you're an artist and you want to make purple, you get the red, you get the blue, you mix it up. You know, it's not cheating, is it? You've made that yourself. You know, that colour you have made yourself. And although somebody else has told you it's red and blue, it doesn't matter, you know. So if the word secret, if I'm stuck on the word secret and somebody says, Google or a website says, what rhymes with secret is, now I'm thinking about the crut. I can't, crut, but, yeah, but, secret. I've got a secret, but, yeah, that'll do. So whatever. That's just asking, you know, what's another word for this? Just, you know, I can't think for myself at the moment. So, and it's still words, and it's your words, and you might get given 50 words, and you've got to choose one of those words to rhyme with secret. Anyway, enough bloody rambling on, Bri. Look at my nose. Okay, I'm going to go. What happened with my nose? I bought some mole remover that you stick on. It's not here, it's in the bathroom. That you stick on a sticky bud, not a sticky bud, a bloody earbud. I had this little red dot. I've had this red dot for years on my nose, and it sticks out just slightly, and I can see it only from this direction, from that direction. So it must be over that side of the nose. I know my nose is bent, ain't they all? So I can see it from that direction, just slightly, and it started to get to me, and I thought I'd get some of this stuff. I've used that before in the past, years ago. Anyway, this must have been far too strong or something, but I read the directions, because I can read Chinese, so I put my little thing on, and I put a little dab on, and I had a look, made sure it was fine in the mirror, and that was in the bathroom, and I'd made a Slurpee. Well, there's a surprise. So, I came in here and I thought I'd just give it a minute or two, and I was having my Slurpee and it started stinging, so I thought, oh, that's good, it's doing its work, you know. Then it started really stinging, and I thought, oh, I better go and wipe this off. Anyway, when I did, there was like a hole in my bloody nose. Yeah, I know. I think if I would have left it any more, I would have looked like Michael Jackson or somebody else who's had a nose job. Luckily I didn't leave it anymore, and here we are. So that's what I did with my nose. Thank you, Mel. It's always interesting to have a question, so if you ever got a question, just ask me a question. I'll see if I can make a video on it. I've no idea when the second book of poetry is going to come out, but if you're interested, the first book is on eBay. The cheapest that I can possibly sell it for. So go over to eBay if you want to. I'm just watching a little baby bird. Maybe he's not a baby, maybe he's just small. Could be a wren, W-R-E-N, could be. It's not a robin, I don't think. Go over to eBay if you want to. My eBay, links are in the description under every single video, they always are. So if there's any art or books or anything, then issue art on eBay and get yourself a bargain. As I say, it's as cheap as chips, really. I can't go any lower because I'm selling it at what I'm buying it for, basically. So that's my hope with the second book as well, is to keep the price right the way down. The reason of keeping the price so low is that I just want as many people as possible to enjoy poetry. If you only ever bought one poetry book and it was mine, number one, I'd feel very blessed, very grateful, very privileged as well. But by buying a poetry book, you may think, oh, I really enjoy this. I'm going to look for another poetry book by a different author, you know, and you may get into somebody else. And that's great as far as I'm concerned, you know. It's a wonderful thing reading, snuggling up on a wet, damp, dark, miserable day and reading a few pages of a book or a poem or two is a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay. Take care then, and we'll be back another day. Cheers. And be well.